When the cruise director's office called to offer me 7 nights of free passage in exchange for writing a nostalgia piece on Celestine Gray's comeback, I accepted without hesitation. Decades ago, Celestine had walked through walls on late-night television and levitated a politician over the Potomac. Then she vanished after a tragic fire at the Century Theater, leaving behind a myth that refused to die. The return, billed on the Oceania Splendor's playbill, promised an intimate revival of the old miracles for a captive audience drifting between Miami and Cartagena. I arrived at the port expecting rhinestones and smoke machines. Instead, I found a pale woman in tailored black, hair threaded with silver. Celestine stood alone on the gangway, greeting every passenger, her smile polite, eyes remote. When my turn came, she clasped my hand and said, "Words have weight, Mr. Reyes. Try to use only the ones you can carry." I had never told her my name. The cruise manifest listed me as A. Reyes, freelance journalist. I chalked it up to research and stepped aboard with a thrill of unease. The Splendor sailed at dusk. Champagne flowed, steel drums thumped. By morning we would be halfway to Cuba, and Celestine's first performance was scheduled for 9. At 8:50, I joined a crowd of 200 in the midship theater. The stage was bare except for a single topped hat on a pedestal. The house lights dimmed, and she stepped from the wings to near ecstatic applause. Her voice was quiet, forcing the room to lean forward. She began with card flourishes, fountains of red diamonds, slow dissolves of ink from queens' faces, fan spreads that rearranged themselves mid-air. She invited a volunteer, a retired kindergarten teacher named Evelyn Danson, to sign a card in silver marker. Evelyn scrawled ED across the jack of spades, held it up for us to see, then tucked it into the deck. Celestine squared the cards, tapped the packet once, and opened it again. The jack was gone. "So am I," Evelyn announced cheerfully, then looked around, confused. She took one step, wavered, and vanished. There was no flash of powder, no swirl of curtain, only an empty spot and a collective gasp. In the seat where Evelyn had been moments earlier lay the signed jack of spades. Beside the initials, new words had appeared, written in the same silver ink. I left my boy alone at the pool. When I returned, he had drowned. A scream ripped from the audience. An elderly man, presumably Evelyn's husband, lunged for the stage. Security restrained him, but the damage was done. We had all read the sentence. Mothers clutched children. Someone shouted for the ship's doctor. Celestine stood motionless in the center of the uproar, head bowed as if accepting a benediction. "Illusion," she murmured into her lapel mic. Nothing more. The show was canceled. The theater cleared. Crew searched every deck, stateroom, and maintenance corridor until dawn. They found no trace of Evelyn Danson. I sat in the deserted lounge jotting reactions, but the pen felt heavy, weighted by a memory that wasn't mine. Thin chlorinated air, a whistle, a small body floating face down. I had never been to that pool, never had a son, yet the image gnawed at my nerves like truth. Captain Leclerc summoned Celestine to his office. I loitered in the corridor, eavesdropping through the thin bulkhead. He demanded to know what trick she had employed. She replied, "The best illusions require consent. If your passenger disappeared, she wished to go." Leclerc threatened to turn the ship around. Celestine reminded him that a cancellation would strand us in open water without proper jurisdiction. "Sail on," she advised. "I will amend my program." The second performance was scheduled reluctantly 2 nights later. Word had spread, and half the guests stayed in their cabins. Still, a nervous crowd of 90 gathered, compelled by either curiosity or the lure of explanation. Celestine walked on stage and asked for 3 volunteers. No one moved. At last, a pair of honeymooners and a stoic poker tourist shuffled forward. They signed cards, King of Hearts, 7 of Clubs, Queen of Diamonds, and returned to their seats clutching numbered paddles. Celestine had them lift the paddles in random order while she riffled the deck. Whenever a number appeared, its holder rose, performed a banal action, whistle, hop, recite the alphabet backward, and sat. The audience relaxed, laughter returned. On the seventh sequence, she snapped her fingers. The honeymoon husband froze mid-air, half-jump. He melted like wax and was gone before his wife landed from her own hop. The 7 of clubs lay in her palm. Across the glossy surface, new lines crawled. I held the camera and kept filming because I wanted our vacation to look happy. She slipped on the trail and fell 40 feet. The bride shrieked and flung the card away. It fluttered over the railing at stage's edge and struck a woman in the 3rd row. She read the words, paled, and fainted. A slow wave of terror rippled outward, people whispering, "What was it? Let me see," and others trying not to look yet unable to resist. I saw the fall through unfamiliar eyes. Rocks below, an echoing thud, the clatter of a dropped GoPro. Then the unbearable click of plastic continuing to record. I tasted bile. We found the bride later on promenade deck, rocking in a deck chair, mumbling details of her husband's last sight, the shape of his open mouth, the wet cartilage exposed by broken teeth. She claimed the thoughts pressed against her skull from the outside, like barnacles seeking purchase. Only 60 passengers remained willing to attend the 3rd performance, but Captain Leclerc prohibited it. Celestine petitioned. "Fear," she argued, "is a story half told." If she ended the cruise without revealing the final act, hysteria might escalate. Against the advice of his first officer, Leclerc compromised. The show would occur in the smaller Galileo lounge under armed supervision. I attended out of duty, and because the memories blooming in my head demanded completion. The lounge smelled of disinfectant and whiskey. Celestine waited beside a grand piano, barefoot, hair unbound. She addressed us as comrades in survival. "Tonight," she said, "no cards, no volunteers, only demonstration." She placed a mirror on the piano lid and instructed us to regard our reflections. "Consider the moment you traded wonder for doubt." The lights flickered. My reflection leaned forward, though I remained seated. Its face blurred, resolving into that of a teenage boy condensed from half-forgotten rumor. Timothy Reyes, my cousin, dead at 15 from an oxycodone overdose. Timothy had borrowed my driver's license to buy beer the night he died. He existed in a hazy annex of guilt I rarely visited. Now he stared from the glass, lips glossy with foam. Around me, passengers moaned. I heard fragments. My brother under the ice. The stoplight I ran. Letters I never mailed to my mother. Our reflections whispered accusations only we could hear. When the flicker ended, 4 chairs sat empty. On each vacant cushion rested a blank playing card. Under black light they glowed with invisible script. Security collected them in evidence bags, but as soon as the ultraviolet lamps were switched off, ink seeped through, legible to all, a litany of private shames that did not belong to the vanished, but rather to us, the witnesses. Crew quarantined the theater, posted guards at Celestine's suite, and ordered passengers to remain in cabins. 200 of us were left aboard. We should have felt safe behind locked doors, but the cards, though confiscated, multiplied. They slipped under thresholds, fluttered from air vents, appeared between pages of library books. Each carried a different memory, always signed by the person who had disappeared, but detailing sins of someone still present. You'd find one, read the lines, and the memory embedded like a splinter. Soon you couldn't tell whether it was yours or adopted. People wept apology for crimes they might never have committed. I confronted Celestine the following afternoon. She sat at her vanity, applying crimson along her cheekbones as if readying for a matinee no one would attend. I accused her of psychological warfare. She called it liberation. "I open locked doors," she said. "I give people back the parts they disowned." When I demanded the return of the missing passengers, she rested a cool hand on mine. "They returned themselves," she whispered. "The moment someone else read what they'd hidden, the burden transferred. They walked free of it. Where did they go? Into the possibility we surrendered years ago, somewhere pliant. Anger flared. They had families, they had credit cards, social security numbers. Those are cages shaped like guarantees. I wanted to throttle her, yet a deeper urge stirred. To confess. My cousin's overdose felt freshly mine. I'd provided the ID, maybe the sense of adult invincibility that killed him. If speaking the memory could purge the ache, perhaps I'd follow Evelyn and the others into weightlessness. Celestine sensed the shift. She produced a deck and offered it. "Sign," she said, "and I'll test whether your guilt is performative or profound." I turned away and fled. That night, a storm pummeled the ship. Lightning danced on black water, sculpting silhouettes as passengers roamed the corridors half-mad with intrusive recollection. Some shoved cards into laundry chutes, only to find them tucked back into pockets. Others tried drowning them in the pool, but the cards floated, stubborn, letters gleaming through chlorinated blue. Crew switched off the ship-wide intercom after panicked voices began reciting confessions over the PA. "I swapped the test results. I slipped the ring down the drain. I held his hand on the rail and let go." At 2 a.m., the alarms howled. Engine room fire. We mustered at the lifeboats in horizontal rain. I scanned faces, 24 fewer than head count suggested. Celestine stood aft, unfazed by wind, gown whipping like black sailcloth. "Prepare for final passage," she told us, not shouting yet audible over the gale. Sparks shot skyward. Smoke curled. In the strobing light I saw shapes stepping through bulkheads, figures semi-transparent, each holding the signed card that had birthed their flight. Evelyn smiled, flicking pool water from ghostly arms. The honeymoon husband waved his 7 of clubs, gesture almost merry. They gathered behind Celestine like attendants to a queen. Leclerc, soot-streaked, pointed a flare gun at her. "Enough!" His voice broke. "Give them back, or I swear." "Would you shoulder their memories?" she asked. "All of them?" "They'd return if called, but they'd drag the weight with them, and it would crush you." She walked toward the captain, palms open. "Be grateful I leave the cards. They dilute the sorrow. Share it, and you'll survive." Leclerc fired. The flare punched through Celestine's chest in a shower of magnesium. For an instant, her body was a lantern, rib cage aglow, organs rendered in X-ray relief. Then the light folded, and she was gone, leaving a single playing card spinning to the deck. It landed face up, the Joker, blank banner across its grin. The storm spent itself by dawn. The engine fire had been smoke from a malfunctioning generator, damage minimal. But 73 passengers were missing, including the captain. No distress call had been sent. We limped toward Cartagena under First Officer Mbeki's command. Coast Guard would investigate, but we knew what they would find. No evidence, only rumor. The signed cards remained, hundreds of them, scattered like albino feathers. Crew tried collecting them in sealed drums, yet whenever someone thought to double-check, at least one card always lay outside, daring another reader. I locked myself in my cabin with a notebook and wrote the memories that now nested in me. The cousin's overdose, a drunk driver's jolt and wheel spin, an abandoned beagle crying behind a convenience store. They pulsed like foreign organs, but when I set them down in ink, I felt lighter. Celestine's thesis clarified. Pain divided is bearable. Secrets isolate and therefore devour. She had staged not a comeback, but a jailbreak, for guilt, shame, grief. On the final night before docking, I walked the upper deck. Moonlight silvered the wake, each churned wave resembling a shuffled card backsliding into the next. I found the Joker where the engineer had taped it to the bridge door. Someone had written across the blank ribbon, "Where do stories go when they leave us?" I took the card and carried it to my cabin. I thought about consent, how Celestine claimed illusions required it, how we had surrendered ours by stepping onto her stage or merely by confronting the unknown with curiosity. I wondered if resisting the invitation was truly possible. Holding the joker, I remembered Celestine's first words. Use only the ones you can carry. Stories, like words, have weight. The Splendor docked without incident. Authorities boarded, questioned, photographed, compiled lists. They confiscated every playing card yet missed the joker tucked inside my passport. While they searched, I studied the other passengers. Their eyes held a glimmer I recognized from old footage of Celestine's golden years. Spectators in awe. Minds widened. Terror married to wonder. Weeks have passed. The joker lies on my desk, blank again. Occasionally I wake to find a script spooling across it in my own hand. A stranger's admission, an unclaimed grief. I collect them in a file. Friends think I'm researching another article, but I'm building something closer to communion. Every time I read one aloud, the ink fades. The memory remains but drains of poison. I intend to invite listeners, maybe in a small theater off Broadway or on a night train bound for nowhere special. I will shuffle the deck, ask for volunteers, pass out silver markers. Celestine is gone, yet I feel her presence like a pressure in the wings. The human mind, she proved, is the greatest venue. Curtains made of forgetting, spotlight of attention bright enough to scorch. One day, if I do this correctly, I might twirl a card, snap my fingers, and watch someone step through the seam between shame and sky. The audience will gasp at the impossibility. But those who understand will know it is not vanishing, it is release. And if I follow after, if the last signature inscribed is my own, let the joker fall where I stood. Let its blank banner challenge whoever finds it to remember that magic, real magic, was never smoke or mirrors or sleight of hand. It was, and is, the willingness to carry another person's story for a while, until the weight feels like flight.